You ever get that gut feeling something's wrong, but you just can't prove it yet? That was me, mug of coffee in hand, staring through my kitchen window as a bunch of strangers strutted straight across my backyard coolers and tennis rackets in tow, like they owned the place. I wasn't even out of pajamas yet, and suddenly my brand new house felt like a hotel lobby. I burst outside in my slippers, shouting, "Excuse me, this is private property," only for this lady with perfect hair to turn slow and give me that tight, patronizing smile. "Oh, you must be the new homeowner. Name's Eleanor Fitzgerald, HOA president," she said, like I'd somehow wandered into her domain. "We have Tuesday morning tennis here. It's in the community guidelines," she announced, waving her little group forward like I was the crazy one for asking. You ever feel so angry your voice just disappears? That was me standing on my own property watching 5 people claim my $35,000 tennis court like it was a public park. Now I'd read those guidelines cover to cover. There was nothing in there about my court being community property. But Eleanor just tilts her head, all smug. "Maybe you missed the addendum." She says the previous owner agreed to share it. It's all official. Take it up with the board if you want. First Thursdays at 7 sharp. Then she led her posse right past me, the sound of tennis balls thumping, echoing all the way into my bones. For the next 3 days, I tore apart every document from my closing, called my realtor twice nothing, not a single word about shared amenities, easements, or anything close. My realtor just kept repeating, "That's not in any disclosure, I would have told you." But every day, more strangers showed up. Eleanor's husband running a youth class, folks setting up tournaments with tables on my patio like it was Wimbledon. The kicker. When I asked a young mom about it, she just whispered Eleanor's particular about this court. She had one at her old house, but downsized. Then she scurried off, leaving me with more questions than answers. So I showed up at that HOA meeting, clutching every scrap of evidence, ready for war. Picture this: 12 neighbors folding chairs in Eleanor's palace of a living room, trophies and photos of her grinning behind a tennis net everywhere you look. When my turn came, I didn't ask. I told them loud and clear, this isn't a concern. This is a property rights issue. There's no agreement, no easement, nothing that says you can use my court. Eleanor tried to play her addendum card, but I cut her off. I want to see this magical document because it wasn't in my closing, not in county records, and my realtor says it doesn't exist. The room went dead silent. Then the balding treasurer piped up, maybe it was an oversight. I stared him down, made it clear, any more trespassing and we'll see who's got oversight problems. Eleanor's face went from polite to ice cold. "We've always had access," she snapped. The previous owner understood community spirit. I called her bluff, said I'd spoken to them, which full disclosure I hadn't yet, but her look of panic said plenty. This wasn't an accident. It was a land grab. As I left, my neighbor Dave called out, "Bold move. Just watch your back." Last guy who crossed her had violations until he moved. For a week things were quiet, but then came the certified letter, multiple violations from the color of my court lines to equipment height. That night, Eleanor herself was out there measuring my fence with a tape. Just confirming for the report, she said, not even pretending to be embarrassed. Fines start Monday, $100 a day per violation. I laughed out loud, which threw her off, told her the board couldn't even meet except first Thursdays unless there's a 72-hour emergency notice, which I hadn't received. Her smile flickered. That weekend, I installed security cameras everywhere. Monday, my doorbell rings. County official clipboard in hand. Got a complaint about your tennis court not matching approved plans. Perfect. I'd like to file a complaint too. See, Eleanor didn't know I was a compliance auditor for the county planning department. I don't just know the rules, I write them. Her little power play had just turned into something much bigger. 3 weeks later, my friend Miguel, the inspector, found nothing wrong with my property, but flagged all kinds of irregularities with Eleanor's records. That's when Frank Thompson, former treasurer, showed up on my porch. Shaky hands, eyes darting, says he quit because the books never matched the dues collected. When he questioned it, his wife got daily violation notices until they just gave up. He pointed me to a storage unit, Unit 23, safe lock storage, where the real records were kept. I went to check it out, pretended to be renting a unit, spotted the treasurer sneaking out with a banker's box, watched him deliver it straight to Eleanor's house. Then I pulled aerial photos from the county records my court was built. After, Eleanor took power, and there was never any community use filed. The next day, a construction crew arrived outside about to rip out my fence for community expansion. I called the cops, showed them my deed and property survey. Officer Ramirez agreed this was criminal trespassing, not a civil dispute. The workers packed up. Eleanor came screeching up, threatening liens and legal hell, but this time Ramirez stood in her way. That night I got a text, Community Center 7 p.m. Others want to help. Come alone. F. I showed up to 7 neighbors sharing stories of Eleanor's reign, disappearing funds, fake expenses, selective rule enforcement. Diane, former landscaping chair, had been forced out for questioning a $20,000 bill for plantings that never showed up. Frank passed me a thumb drive, 5 years of records. Eleanor's sister's company was being paid hundreds of thousands for maintenance on things she never touched, including my tennis court, which until recently they claimed wasn't even community property. We made a plan. I'd handle legal complaints, Diane would organize a petition, others would collect stories. As we left, we spotted Eleanor's SUV circling the parking lot. She knew we were coming. Next morning, I found my windshield smashed with a tennis ball, one with Eleanor's custom logo on it. The note read, "Accidents happen when you play dangerous games." Instead of being scared, it fired me up. Dominic, a former board member, met me at a coffee shop, hands shaking, told me how Eleanor and her crew had targeted homes, changed the rules to claim private property, and even planned to pressure me into selling the whole house for their dream clubhouse. Back home, Sophia, my across-the-street neighbor, pulled me inside. She said Eleanor drove her husband to a heart attack fighting for their pizza oven. They did it to us too. We need proof and someone they can't bully. Someone like a government auditor, she said, eyes wide when she realized who I was. Suddenly it wasn't just me versus Eleanor, it was half the neighborhood. But Eleanor didn't quit. I woke up to an HOA email. Exciting community court improvement project begins tomorrow with a permit I never approved. I called City Hall, but after hours. That night I barely slept. Dawn broke with construction trucks lined up outside Eleanor in a hard hat, her attorney board members all ready to start tearing down my fence. I stood firm, showed everyone my government credentials, announced I was the newly assigned federal auditor for all HOA finances in the county. The crowd went silent. "Construction's postponed," I said, "while I investigate your finances." Eleanor's face lost all its color. That night my supervisor called. Eleanor had tried to get me pulled from the audit citing conflict of interest. Instead, I got assigned to partner agent Marissa Reyes, Financial Crimes, who showed up at my door next morning with her own folder of red flags on Eleanor's HOA. Neighbors flooded in, telling stories, koi ponds turned community water features, wheelchair ramps forced out by violations, people strong-armed out of their own homes. It was always the same playbook, target, pressure, take. Marissa started to see the pattern. This wasn't just about amenities, but about property values and Eleanor's real estate business, flipping houses she'd improved with stolen features. Then Eleanor called an emergency HOA meeting packed with angry residents and her attorney. She accused me of abusing my position. I countered by unveiling giant maps showing every private property she'd targeted and proof of hundreds of thousands in fake expenses paid to board members' families. The room exploded. Just then a news crew showed up, tipped off about financial misconduct and property rights violations. Eleanor tried to close the meeting, but the security guard just stepped aside, letting the press in. For an hour, residents lined up to tell their stories. Marissa presented the USB drive evidence of fake minutes, altered votes, and a money trail leading right to Eleanor's sister's company. Tom, Eleanor's husband, tried to sneak out with a laptop. Marissa stopped him, laptop in hand, saying he'd tried to wipe the server. That's when things fell apart. An old neighbor stood up trembling and moved for a vote of no confidence. Hands shot up all around the room. Eleanor's power vanished before our eyes. Afterwards, she cornered me outside, eyes blazing. "You've destroyed everything I built," she spat. "This community was nothing before I took over." I just shrugged. "You built it by stealing from your neighbors." The county inspector showed up to say my court was up to code while Eleanor stormed off. Later, neighbors gathered at Sophia's, inviting me to celebrate and plan the future real community, not the kind Eleanor invented. 3 months later, we held our first friendly tournament, cut the ribbon on a new entrance, and the board, now led by honest folks, refunded forced-out families and set up new rules for transparency. My job was harder than ever, but I came home to friends, not foes. You know, maybe Eleanor was right about one thing: a tennis court should be enjoyed. She just never understood it had to be done right. Funny thing though, my final audit report named names all the way to county officials and the mayor. Tomorrow it goes public. The war against corruption's far from over, but for now I'll just sit on my patio, listen to tennis balls and laughter. And remember, sometimes the only way to win is to stand your ground and play your own game. What do you think? Was I right to fight back, or should I have just let it go for the sake of community spirit? Drop your thoughts below. I really want to hear how you'd handle a neighbor like Eleanor.